In a world where stories fade into dust, there is a place where they are kept alive. Here, in these endless halls, voices from centuries past whisper once more, and forgotten worlds open their doors to you. Welcome to Audible Archives, where every word endures and every tale finds its voice.
Before we step into the mist, make sure you like, share your thoughts in the comments, and subscribe to Audible Archives so you never miss the next chapter, because once you enter this dream, it won't let you go. Beneath veils of shifting mist, a forgotten prophecy stirs. In a land where dreams walk beside the waking, an ancient power whispers to those who will listen and those who will obey. This is Mistwoven Legends, The Awakening Dream, chapters 1 to 5, written by Raul, narrated by Rob. Step carefully. The dream is waiting. Mistwoven Legends, The Awakening Dream is an original work of fiction by Raul for Audible Archives. All characters, locations, and events are the product of the author's imagination. Any resemblance to actual persons, living or dead, is purely coincidental. No part of this recording may be reproduced or distributed without prior written permission. Chapter 1. Discovery. Reverie. Silt whisper moved silently through the dreamscape, their translucent form glowing faintly like a sliver of moonlight against a sea of swirling color. The dream thread stretched infinitely in all directions, shimmering paths that pulsed with life. Each thread was a mortal's dream, delicate and alive, winding through the veil like rivers of light. For a lucid whisper such as reverie, it was their sworn duty to maintain balance, to soothe nightmares, mend fraying dreams, and guide wandering souls back to peaceful slumber. Tonight, however, the dreamscape felt wrong. The dreams reverie touched were frayed at the edges, their soft hums of life disrupted by discordant vibrations. Some threads dimmed as if suffocated, while others pulsed with erratic bursts of color that stung against reverie's essence. Whispers, faint and fractured, hovered at the edge of their hearing, just beyond reach. Reverie paused, floating above one such flickering thread, its silver sheen marred by bruised shadows. "This isn't right," they murmured softly, their voice a ripple in the stillness of the veil. "What's happening here?" Drawing closer, they let their energy reach out to the fragile dream. A shock, cold and sudden, surged through them the moment their essence made contact. Reverie recoiled, trembling as a ripple of imbalance radiated outward. This was no ordinary disturbance. It was something else, something deeper. Reverie steadied themselves, form flickering as they refocused, observing the thread carefully. The bruise-like shadows didn't behave as they should. They pulsed, almost like a living thing, spreading deeper into the dream with each passing moment. Reverie narrowed their focus, their glow dimming as they probed the disturbance with careful intent. It was like trying to touch smoke, intangible yet ever present. But Reverie could feel its source, something vast, something ancient. From the corner of their awareness, a pull emerged. At first it was faint, a distant hum at the far reaches of the veil. But it grew stronger, tugging insistently at their core. Reverie turned toward it, curiosity flaring despite the unease pooling within them. No dream thread lay in that direction, no familiar boundary of the dreamscape. It was a place unmarked, uncharted, hidden far beyond where any lucid whisper had reason to tread. "This cannot be right," Reverie thought. "We are not meant to stray so far." And yet, Reverie moved toward it. As they drifted deeper into the unknown, the vibrant colors of the dreamscape began to fade. The threads grew sparse, their luminescence dimming until all that surrounded Reverie was shadow and silence. The further they went, the colder it became. It wasn't a physical cold, but something deeper, a chill that pressed against Reverie's core, slowing their essence, dimming their light. The hum grew louder, vibrating through the stillness like a heartbeat. Reverie hesitated. The edges of the dreamscape had never been mapped. Few had dared venture there. Whispers told of forgotten dreams, discarded by the mortals who had once imagined them, lingering at the edge of creation like dust swept under a rug. But this was different. This was alive, and then they saw it. The abyss of forgotten dreams. It stretched before them, a vast chasm of swirling shadows and fractured light. It was not black, not void, but a shifting mass of darkness threaded with glimmers of silver and pale blue, as if the remnants of forgotten dreams still tried to shine. The edges of the abyss rippled as though alive, tugging at the very fabric of the veil. It was as beautiful as it was terrifying, a wound in the dreamscape that pulsed with chaotic energy. Reverie hovered at the edge, their form flickering with uncertainty. The magnetic pull was undeniable now, wrapping around them like unseen hands. It was not malicious, but neither was it welcoming. It called to them, a silent voice vibrating through their core. Reverie reached out instinctively, their glowing essence bright against the looming dark. "What are you?" they whispered, more to themselves than to the abyss. The chasm stirred, its surface shivering like liquid glass. Then came the whispering, a cacophony of voices layered atop one another, faint but urgent, as though each sound had been dragged across an eternity. Reverie flinched as the whispers invaded their mind, their meaning unclear but heavy with sorrow. Suddenly, a tremor passed through the abyss, sending waves of shadow rippling outward. Reverie gasped as the pull intensified, a rush of energy coursing through their form. It was unlike anything they had ever felt. Wild and raw, like lightning tearing through the fabric of a storm, images exploded in their mind, fragmented glimpses of dreams dissolving into nothingness, of faces blurred by time, of voices crying out and vanishing into silence. "Stop!" Reverie cried out, their voice fracturing into echoes. But the abyss didn't listen. It surged around them, and for a moment, Reverie felt themselves pulled forward, their edges unraveling as though the chasm were trying to consume them. They fought back, straining against the pull. Reverie's glow flared brightly as they pushed, drawing upon reserves of energy they hadn't known they possessed. Slowly, inch by inch, they wrenched themselves free of the abyss's grasp. The darkness receded, leaving them trembling and dimmed. Reverie knelt at the edge of the chasm, their essence flickering unevenly, the memory of that raw energy still pulsing through them. What is this place? They thought, disoriented. The silence around the abyss was absolute, as if it had swallowed even the echoes of their cries. Reverie looked back at the chasm, its surface now still, the swirling shadows quiet once more. But something had changed within them, a seed planted, a mark left by whatever they had touched. "I shouldn't be here," they thought, the words a whisper in their mind. And yet, they couldn't shake the feeling that the abyss had seen them, had touched them in a way that left an indelible mark. They could still feel its pull, faint now like a second heartbeat beneath their own. The journey back felt longer than it should, as though the abyss's pull had stretched time itself. By the time the familiar glow of the dream threads reappeared, Reverie's essence felt dimmed, weighed down by what they had seen. Back in the sanctuary of the veil, Reverie found no solace. The other lucid whispers moved gracefully among the threads, their forms glowing in soft hues of silver and blue. To them, the night was as ordinary as any other, a night of healing, of guidance. Reverie, however, felt as though the abyss lingered within them, unseen but present. "You look unwell, Reverie," a voice said. Reverie turned to see Oren Duskbloom, an elder whisper whose glow was steady and unwavering like a lantern in deep fog. "I'm fine," Reverie said quickly, though their voice trembled. Oren's gaze was sharp. "No, you are not. I can feel the dissonance in your essence. Something has disrupted you." Reverie hesitated. For a moment they considered telling Oren everything, but as they opened their mouth to speak, the words caught in their throat. The abyss felt private. A secret that belonged to them alone. "It's nothing," Reverie said finally. "Just a disturbance in the threads. It's been a strange night." Oren studied them for a long moment, his glow dimming slightly as if in thought. Finally, he nodded. "Be careful, Reverie. The dreamscape is vast, but not infinite. There are places even we are not meant to go." Reverie swallowed hard. "Of course." Oren drifted away, leaving Reverie alone once more. But their mind buzzed with questions they could not ignore. What was the abyss? Why had it called to them? And what was the strange energy that still pulsed faintly within their being? As the dreamscape continued its quiet rhythm around them, Reverie glanced toward the distant horizon, toward the place where the abyss waited. Chapter 2. The Forbidden Abyss. Reverie's Siltwhisper's form wavered as they emerged from the veil, the thin line separating the dreamscape from Dormaria. Shaken and dimmed, their usual glow barely flickered. Dormaria, home to the lucid whispers, was as tranquil as ever, its spires of silver light stretching skyward, dissolving into the mists of ethereal twilight. The great city was timeless, forged from dream stuff itself, a sanctuary for those who guided mortal dreams. Yet for the first time in centuries, Reverie felt out of place. The abyss lingered within them, its pull gnawed at the edges of their being, a low hum that thrummed just beneath the rhythm of their essence. Though the chasm now lay far behind, its shadow clung to them, heavy and oppressive, like a dark secret folded into their light. Reverie floated through Dormaria's winding corridors of mist and light, their path instinctive. Lucid whispers moved past them, their translucent forms glowing in various hues, lavenders, blues, silvers, soft murmurs of conversation flowing like whispers on the wind. All seemed unaware of the weight Reverie carried, the dissonance threading through their core. They reached the Archivium, a structure at the heart of Dormaria, a vast, spiraling tower that pulsed faintly, its walls made of interwoven threads of light and dream energy. Here, the oldest texts of the lucid whispers were stored, curated by the elders and studied only in times of great need. The Codex of Reveries. Reverie hesitated at the threshold. Orin Duskbloom's words echoed faintly in their mind. The dreamscape is vast, but not infinite. There are places even we are not meant to go. And yet they had gone there. They had stood at the edge of the abyss and felt it see them. "I need answers," they whispered to themselves. Inside the Archivium, the air felt heavier, thicker, charged with the wisdom and weight of eons. The central chamber was immense, a hollow sphere where luminous scrolls and books floated gently, suspended in air. Each text glowed faintly, tethered to unseen currents that guided them in quiet, endless orbits. Revery's essence flared slightly as they entered, though the light was weak, wavering. An elder lingered at the far edge of the room, their form impossibly vast. Tendrils of silver energy stretched across the Archivium like roots binding the space together. Reverie froze, their form dimming instinctively, hoping to remain unseen. The elders were ancient beings, more attuned to the dreamscape than any living whisper, and they rarely concerned themselves with the affairs of others unless something disturbed the balance. Reverie floated carefully toward the lower levels of the Archivium, where texts deemed forbidden or dangerous lay hidden beneath layers of protective wards. The Codex of Reveries had not been spoken of in centuries, but Reverie had glimpsed its name once long ago, mentioned in hushed tones as a text of forbidden knowledge. "The Abyss of Forgotten Dreams," Reverie whispered, their voice a ripple in the silent space. Even speaking the words made their light dim further, as though the abyss reached across time to snuff them out. The lower levels of the Archivium were darker. The glow suspended scrolls dimmed here, and the air vibrated faintly with latent energy. Reverie paused before a heavy archway of pure shadow. Faint runes glimmered at its edges, whispering warnings to any who dared enter. "Turn back! The knowledge within devours light. Some truths are better forgotten." Reverie ignored them, pressing their essence to the doorway. It shivered open, shadows parting like a curtain to reveal a small circular chamber. At its center floated the Codex of Reveries. The book was immense, bound in shifting light and shadow, its pages rippling as though caught in a breeze that didn't exist. Its glow was strange, a deep, dark silver that seemed to consume the light around it rather than reflect it. Reverie drifted closer, the hum of the abyss growing louder in their mind. The Codex opened for them, pages flipping on their own until they settled on a section etched in dark, jagged script that seemed to bleed across the parchment. "The Abyss of Forgotten Dreams." Reverie's essence shuddered as they read. At the edges of the dreamscape where light ends and silence begins lies the abyss, a chasm of forgotten imaginings, discarded truths and dreams abandoned by time. It is a place of great power, for within its depths linger echoes of dreams untold. To those who dare touch the abyss, immense strength may be granted, for dreams, even forgotten ones, hold a spark of creation itself. But beware, for the abyss is not passive, it does not give freely. The energy it grants corrupts, twisting the light of its wielder into shadow. To hold such power is to lose oneself, to become one with the forgotten. The words seemed to press against Reverie's core, heavy and unrelenting. They trembled as fragmented images flashed through their mind, visions of the abyss reaching for them, shadows clawing at their form, the whispers calling their name in voices that belonged to no one. And yet, buried beneath the terror, there was a pull, a temptation. The power the Codex spoke of was real. Reverie had felt it surge through them when they had touched the abyss's edge. That energy could heal the dreamscape. It could mend fraying threads in ways the whispers never could. But at what cost? Reverie closed the Codex with a trembling motion, the book's dark glow lingering in their vision. They floated back toward the exit, their thoughts spiraling. Why would such knowledge be forbidden, they wondered, if the abyss's power could be harnessed for good? But even as they thought it, they felt the hum of the abyss within them, a reminder of the darkness that awaited. The Codex was clear, the power was a trap. Those who sought to wield it would become consumed. As they emerged from the shadows, the Archivium seemed brighter, almost blinding. Reverie paused, gathering their frayed essence, trying to steady the tremor that ran through them. "I cannot tell anyone," they whispered. The decision came suddenly, instinctively. To share what they had seen, what they had felt, would be to risk everything. The elders would never allow such knowledge to spread. They would seek to seal the abyss, to hide it away, perhaps even erase Reverie's memory of it entirely. But Reverie couldn't forget. The abyss had touched them, and it was not done with them. The days that followed passed in a blur. Reverie threw themselves into their duties, mending dreams, guiding mortal souls, tending to fraying threads with a focus so sharp it bordered on desperation. But the abyss lingered at the edge of their thoughts, a shadow that would not leave them. When they closed their eyes, they saw it, the swirling dark, the whispers calling their name. When they touched a fragile dream, they felt the pull, faint but insistent, urging them to return. Reverie began to isolate themselves, drifting at the edges of Dormeria, avoiding the other lucid whispers. Orin noticed, of course. He cornered Reverie in the mists one evening, his silver glow steady and bright. "You are unwell, Reverie," he said softly. "I can feel the shadow in your essence." Reverie tensed. "I'm fine." "No, you are not," Orin replied, his gaze piercing. "Something has touched you, something dark. If you do not speak of it, it will consume you." For a moment, Reverie considered telling him. The words pressed against their mind, aching to be spoken. But then they remembered the codex, the warnings, the pull of the abyss that even now hummed faintly beneath their being. "I said I'm fine," Reverie said sharply, their glow flaring briefly. "I just need time." Orin regarded them for a long moment before finally nodding.
"Very well. But know this, Reverie. Secrets fester. Whatever you are hiding, it will not stay buried forever."
That night, Reverie drifted to the edge of the dreamscape, where the colors faded and the hum of the abyss grew stronger. They stared into the darkness beyond, feeling its pull like a tide. "I won't go back," they whispered. But even as they said it, they knew it was a lie. The abyss had seen them, and it was waiting. Chapter 3, First Test. The summons came at twilight, a ripple through the veil that reverberated across Dormeria, reaching Reverie's silt whisper as they lingered at the edges of the dreamscape. The message, carried in silver echoes, was unmissable. "Reverie Silt Whisper, you are called before the Council of Lucid Whispers. Your presence is required without delay." Reverie's form stilled, the faint hum of the abyss thrumming beneath their surface. It had been days since they'd consulted the Codex of Reveries, and though they tried to ignore the pull of the abyss, its whispers clung to them like shadowed threads. The edges of their being frayed slightly when they moved too quickly, as if they were unraveling. "The Council!" A sharp tension coiled within them. To be summoned directly meant one of two things, an honor or a warning. Reverie was not sure which one they preferred. The Council of Lucid Whispers convened in the Celestia Chamber, a circular hall suspended within Dormeria's highest spire. The room was immense, carved from translucent light that refracted hues of lavender, silver, and blue across its ethereal surfaces. 10 pillars of pure light lined the chamber's perimeter, each representing one of the council's members, their forms impossibly grand and veiled in shimmering mists. Reverie entered cautiously, their glow faint against the overwhelming radiance of the elders. They hovered at the chamber's center, feeling small beneath the council's gaze.
"Reverie Silt Whisper,"
one elder spoke, their voice resonant and layered, as though 1,000 voices spoke in unison. It was Elder Lyrael Lightbloom, whose presence was both calming and commanding.
"You have been summoned for a task of great importance."
"I am ready to serve," Reverie replied, though their essence flickered faintly. "Are you ready?" whispered something dark within them, a note they tried to ignore. "A mortal mind teeters on the brink of collapse," continued Elder Lyrael, the light of her form dimming slightly to convey solemnity. "This mortal Eris Vale harbors a dream so deeply fractured that its unraveling risks consuming her mind entirely, and in turn, the surrounding threads of her world." Reverie felt the weight of the words settle upon them. The dreamscape was interconnected, fragile threads weaving mortal minds together. When a mortal's dream collapsed completely, it could ripple outward, disturbing the harmony of the dream flow. To repair such a fracture was no ordinary task. Elder Orin Duskbloom, whom Reverie had long known as a mentor and guide, stepped forward. "This is a test of great skill and endurance, Reverie. The dreamscape around Eris Vale has grown hostile. Her fears and memories swirl like a storm, resisting our touch. You must stabilize it, bind the fragments together, and guide her back to balance." Reverie's form tensed. "And if I fail?" They dared not voice the question aloud. "We have chosen you," said Elder Lyrael softly, as though hearing Reverie's doubt. "You are strong, Reverie. Trust in your light." The words should have been reassuring, but Reverie felt a chill deep within their being, the hum of the abyss faint but unmistakable answering her call. The gateway to Eris Vale's dream lay fractured, swirling like a whirlpool on the dreamscape's horizon. Reverie stood at its edge, observing the chaos within. The threads of Eris's dreamscape whipped violently, colors blurring into a storm of blacks and grays tinged with crimson. Fragmented memories flickered in and out of focus, images of faces, empty hallways, a looming shadow that seemed to stalk her. Fear, Reverie thought. The dream was overwhelmed by it. They reached out cautiously, their essence brushing the edge of the whirlpool. Instantly it recoiled, as though sensing their touch, the storm intensifying. "This will not be easy," Reverie murmured to themselves, "but it must be done." Taking a deep breath, as much as one could in the dreamscape, Reverie plunged into the storm. The world inside Eris Vale's mind was a labyrinth of shadows. Reverie drifted cautiously through the fractured landscape, weaving threads of silver light as they moved to keep themselves anchored. Pieces of Eris's consciousness floated around them, an overturned chair, a cracked mirror, a child's laughter echoing faintly in the distance. Reverie approached one fragment, a memory. It glowed faintly, pulsing with sorrow. They reached out and touched it, allowing the memory to unravel before them. Eris as a child, sitting alone on a swing. The playground was empty, the sky grey and featureless. She kicked at the dirt, head down, tears streaking her face, lonely. The emotion pressed against Reverie, heavy and cold. "It's all right," Reverie whispered, weaving threads of light around the memory, soothing its jagged edges. "You are not alone." The fragment stilled, its glow softening. Reverie let it drift gently into the silver web they were creating, binding the dreamscape together piece by piece. But the deeper they went, the darker the landscape became. Shadows pooled at the edges of Reverie's vision, shifting unnaturally. The abyss stirred within them, its hum louder now, resonating with the fear and despair that saturated Eris's mind. "You cannot mend this," a voice whispered. It was not Eris's voice, nor their own. It came from within, low, tempting, familiar. "The dreamscape is brittle. You could fix it so easily." Reverie froze. Ahead of them, the dreamstorm swirled violently, a massive shadow at its center, pulsing with dark energy. It was the core of Eris's broken dream, the source of the imbalance. Reverie knew what needed to be done. They had to weave the threads tightly, reinforcing the dream from within. It would be painstaking work, fragile, deliberate. But it was the only way. And yet, the voice persisted. "One touch," it purred. "One touch of the abyss and the storm will calm. You could save her." Reverie's form flickered violently, their light dimming as the pull of the abyss rose within them. For a brief moment they allowed themselves to imagine it, letting the darkness flow through them, bending the storm to their will. It would be so simple, so fast. No, Reverie recoiled from the thought, pulling their essence back. Their form flared, silver light rippling outward, though it sputtered at the edges. "No, I will not." The shadow in the center of the storm roared, sensing their resistance. It expanded, tendrils of darkness lashing out, trying to engulf Reverie. The fragments of Eris's memories shook violently, threatening to shatter completely. "You will fail," the voice hissed. "Why struggle when you could end this?" Reverie gritted their resolve, weaving faster now. They darted through the storm, gathering fragments of light. A mother's smile, a child's laughter, the warmth of sunlight on skin, and pulled them into the web they were creating. The threads of silver energy grew stronger, brightening as Reverie bound each memory together. The shadow at the storm's center roared again, surging forward. Reverie spun sharply, their light blazing, cutting through the darkness. Tendrils of shadow hissed and recoiled, unable to touch the silver threads they wove. "Eris Vale!" Reverie called, their voice echoing across the storm. "You are not alone. I am here." A faint glimmer appeared in the center of the storm, a single light, small and fragile. Reverie surged toward it, weaving the final strands of their web as they moved. The shadow screeched, fighting to pull the light back into its depths, but Reverie was faster. They reached the glimmer and touched it gently. Chapter 4. Shards of the Mortal Mind. Reverie's silt whisper floated at the threshold of the mortal subconscious, their essence wavering like a candle caught in a draught. Before them stretched the broken dreamscape, a chaotic tapestry of shattered images, twisted corridors, and fragmentary whispers that coiled like smoke through the air. The mortal's mind teetered on collapse, and Reverie's task was clear, to weave order from ruin. But the hum of the abyss was louder here. It lingered at the edge of their awareness like a shadow just out of sight. The faint pull, insistent and dark, gnawed at the edges of their resolve. Reverie braced themselves, anchoring their focus to the task ahead. They whispered a silent prayer to the Dreamweaver, the guiding force of all lucid whispers. "I am light, I am purpose, I will mend what is broken." The invocation steadied them, though it could not fully quiet the whispers of the abyss that slithered through their mind like ink through clear water. Reverie drifted into the dreamscape, and immediately the chaos engulfed them. The mortal's mind was a fractured maze. Shards of dreams floated through the void, each one a window into a different memory or imagined reality, all disjointed and writhing with instability. A jagged sliver passed by Reverie's vision, and for a brief moment they caught a glimpse of its contents. A child's laughter, the glow of a sunlit meadow, and then a sudden scream that tore through the light and left only darkness behind. "The dream is collapsing!" The voice belonged to no one, but Reverie felt it in the marrow of their essence. It was the dreamscape itself, warning them of the delicate balance at play. If the fragments could not be restored and woven together, the mortal's mind would unravel completely, leaving behind a hollow, unresponsive husk. Reverie pushed deeper into the shifting labyrinth. Threads of energy extended from their form, reaching for the broken pieces. Each fragment tugged at their essence as if demanding to be whole again. But nothing would come easily. The first spectre appeared as they neared a shard glowing faintly with golden light. It rose from the shadows like a figure half-formed, a silhouette of ink and mist. Its limbs were twisted and jagged, its movements jerky and unnatural. Two hollow voids where eyes should have been turned toward Reverie, and though it had no mouth, they could hear its voice. "Leave this place, little whisper." Reverie's light dimmed faintly as the spectre's presence loomed over them. Shadow energy rippled outward, infecting the edges of the fragile shard. Reverie could see cracks forming along the golden light, and they knew that if the fragment shattered completely, the mortal would lose it forever. "This dream does not belong to you," Reverie answered, their voice steady. "I will mend what you have broken." The spectre laughed, a hollow, grating sound that reverberated through the dreamscape. "Mend? You cannot mend what is already lost. The abyss knows that truth. It offers the power to remake this chaos, but you refuse it." The whispers of the abyss rose sharply at the spectre's words. Reverie felt it like a black tide at their back, urging them to surrender, to release their restraint, to call upon the power they had touched. With its power, you could end this now. Reverie's threads of light faltered for just a moment, the temptation winding through their form like a serpent coiling tighter. "No!" The word cut through the abyss's pull, though it left Reverie shaken. They extended their threads with renewed focus, anchoring them into the golden shard. The spectre lunged forward, claws of shadow tearing through the air, but Reverie's essence flared. "Begone!" Reverie cried, and a pulse of silver light erupted from them, driving the spectre back. It shrieked as it dissolved into tatters of smoke, though its laughter echoed in Reverie's mind long after it was gone. The shard trembled in their grasp, but Reverie guided their energy gently, weaving stabilizing threads of light around its cracks. The golden glow steadied and brightened as the fragment began to settle, its chaos subdued. "One down," Reverie whispered, though the battle was far from over. The dreamscape fought them at every turn. Reverie pieced together fragments of a forgotten childhood, moments of joy marred by sudden shadows that twisted through them like poison. Each shard was a battle, and with every one they repaired, another spectre appeared, born from the mortal's fear, grief, or anger. Each one whispered to Reverie, their voices feeding the abyss's call. "Why fight? Use the abyss. It is within you now. It can fix everything." The words dug into Reverie's mind, a constant pressure that left them fraying at the edges. Each time they resisted, the abyss seemed to tighten its grip, as though displeased with their defiance. Hours passed, perhaps days. Time had little meaning here. At last, Reverie reached the core of the dreamscape. It was a cavernous void, darker and more fragmented than anything they had encountered before. Shards of memories floated in the air like shattered glass, and at the center sat the largest fragment of all. It glowed faintly, a dull silver that flickered like a dying flame. Around it circled three spectres, their forms larger and more defined than the others. They moved with deliberate grace, their voices a chorus of whispers that reverberated through the cavern. "It is pointless. You will fail. Let us help you. Let us fix it." Reverie hovered at the edge of the cavern, their light dim and weak. The abyss was louder here. So loud that it felt as though it was speaking directly into their essence. "Why resist? You have seen what I offer. Power, control, certainty, no more struggle, no more chaos." Reverie's threads wavered, their resolve cracking as exhaustion weighed on them. Could they win this fight alone? Would it not be easier to accept the abyss, just this once? They drifted closer to the central shard, the spectres parting as though welcoming them. The abyss's whispers curled around Reverie's mind like smoke, promising relief, promising strength. But then, a faint pulse came from the shard. Reverie froze. It was small, weak, but unmistakable, a spark of light buried deep within the silver fragment. "The mortal is still here!" The realization hit Reverie like a jolt of lightning. The mortal's mind had not yet given up. Even now, amidst the chaos and the shadow, there was a part of them that fought, a part that clung to hope. Reverie's light flared, the silver glow cutting through the shadow. The spectres hissed and recoiled as Reverie extended their threads of energy, weaving them around the shard with careful precision. "No," Reverie said firmly, their voice ringing with newfound strength. "I will not surrender to you." The abyss roared in protest, its dark energy surging through the cavern. The spectres attacked, their claws of shadow tearing at Reverie's form. Pain lanced through them, their glow flickering under the onslaught. But Reverie held fast, their threads weaving tighter and tighter around the shard. The light within the shard grew brighter, pulsing in time with Reverie's energy. The spectres screamed as the silver glow expanded outward, flooding the cavern with brilliance. Shadows burned away like mist before the sun, and the whispers of the abyss faded into silence. Finally, the shard settled. Reverie hovered above it, their form trembling, their light weak but steady. The cavern around them was still, the chaos subdued. The mortal's dreamscape had been mended. Reverie drifted back to the threshold of the subconscious, their essence heavy with exhaustion. The abyss's whispers were faint now, a dull hum at the edge of awareness, but Reverie knew they were not gone. As they emerged from the dreamscape, the mortal's breathing steadied. The collapse had been averted, and their mind, though fragile, had been saved. Reverie lingered for a moment, watching the mortal sleep peacefully for the first time in what must have been days. "Rest now," they whispered softly. "You are whole again." But even as Reverie returned to the veil, a shadow clung to their thoughts. The abyss was still within them, waiting, and it would not be silent forever. Chapter 5. Echoes of the Abyss. Reverie stood at the precipice of the dreamscape, staring into the fractured expanse that stretched before her. She had known that the abyssal energy was dangerous, that it was something not meant for their world. But what she saw now defied all understanding. Despite their valiant resistance, despite their deepest efforts to halt its incursion, the abyss had found a way through. Its touch was subtle, insidious. It had seeped into the dreamscape, mingling with the very fabric of their world. It was not a violent rupture, but a whisper, a creeping thread that wove itself into the edges of reality. The dreamscape, once a serene and controlled environment, flickered intermittently. At times it seemed as though it was on the verge of disintegration, the edges warping into patterns that were unnatural, alien. But then, almost miraculously, the flow of time and space would stabilize, as if some unseen force had briefly repaired the damage. The abyssal energy that had infected this sacred space seemed to be doing something that Reverie couldn't quite comprehend. It wasn't destroying the dreamscape, at least not immediately. It was as though it was tethered to the very essence of the realm, stabilizing it temporarily, leaving behind faint traces of corruption in its wake. Reverie's heart pounded as she stepped forward, cautiously, her boots making soft echoes on the floor of a dream that no longer felt entirely hers. She could sense the abyss more now than ever before, its whispers a chorus in the back of her mind. It didn't make sense. Why would it be stabilizing the dreamscape even for a brief moment? The energy was chaotic by nature, a bourse of unbridled entropy and madness. It should have torn the dreamscape asunder, walked it into something unrecognizable. And yet here it was, coexisting with this fragile space, at least for the time being. But there was something else, something insidious in the air, something more profound than simple corruption. Reverie couldn't shake the feeling that the abyssal energy was not just a foreign invader. It was shaping the dreamscape in ways they couldn't yet fully comprehend. The edges of reality bent under its influence, pulling the dream world in different directions, causing strange pockets of time to overlap, memories to become intertwined. Visions that had once been mere echoes of past events now felt as though they were bleeding into the present, distorting what was and what could have been. Her eyes flickered toward the horizon, where the boundaries of the dreamscape met the impenetrable blackness that had come to symbolize the abyss. The distant glow of the abyssal energy pulsed in rhythm with the dreamscape's irregular heartbeat, creating an eerie calm that contrasted sharply with the chaos she had come to expect from such an invasion. She could almost hear the whispers again, like faint voices calling to her from the depths, beckoning her to come closer. "What are you?" she whispered under her breath, unable to suppress the tremor in her voice. She wasn't sure if she was asking the abyss itself or her own thoughts. She had never been one to fear the unknown, but this was different. The abyss was not just some distant realm of darkness and nightmare. It was here, in the very fabric of her world. And it was changing everything. She closed her eyes, focusing on the energies surrounding her. The abyssal influence was subtle, like a dark mist that coiled around the pillars of the dreamscape, just out of reach. Reverie could feel it, its pull, its gravity. There was something intoxicating about its power, something that drew her in despite the warnings that echoed in the back of her mind. She could sense the latent potential it offered, the ability to shape and twist the dreamscape as she wished. But that too was a trap. The abyss did not offer power freely, it took far more than it gave. Her thoughts turned to the others, to the companions who had stood with her against the growing darkness. Had they felt this too? Had they sensed the shift, the pull of the abyss within them? They were all still struggling. still fighting against the corruption, but how much longer could they resist? She had heard the words of their enemies, those who had once stood with her as allies, now falling to the lure of the abyss. Were they right to seek it? Was the abyss in some twisted way offering them a form of salvation power in exchange for their souls? But even as these thoughts crossed her mind, Reverie knew that she was not yet lost to the abyss. She could feel the lingering presence of the light, that small spark within her that had kept her grounded for so long. She had always been one to rely on her intuition, her sense of balance and harmony, and it was that inner strength that had allowed her to hold on to her sanity in this ever-shifting dreamscape. But the abyss was a patient force. It did not rush, did not demand immediate surrender. It was slow, methodical, like the tide eroding the shore, one small wave at a time. A sudden shift in the air drew her attention. The whispers grew louder, clearer, their voices now distinct, as though they were speaking directly into her mind. Reverie flinched, the chill of their words seeping into her thoughts like ice. "Come closer, Reverie," the voice intoned, soft and beckoning. "You've always known what you are, what you could be. The power within you is extraordinary. Why deny it? Embrace the abyss, and all will be yours." Reverie recoiled, her pulse quickening. She knew better than to listen to such temptations. She had seen the fate of those who had succumbed to the abyss before. It twisted them, turned them into something monstrous, something unrecognizable. The whispers, the promises, they were nothing but lies, veils designed to mask the inevitable corruption that came with such power. But even so, a seed of doubt began to take root in her mind. She had spent her entire life trying to fight for balance, for peace, but what if that wasn't enough? What if the only way to stop the abyss was to wield its power herself, to turn its corruption into a weapon? What if, in the end, it was not a curse, but a gift? "No," Reverie whispered aloud, shaking her head. "I will not succumb." The whispers paused, and for a moment the dreamscape seemed to hold its breath. Reverie stood at the crossroads, the weight of her decision pressing down on her like a physical force. She could feel the abyss pulsating behind her, beckoning her forward. But she knew that to give in was to lose everything she had fought for. The abyss was not a gift. It was a poison that slowly consumed everything in its path. It might offer power, but it took far more in return. And yet, as she stood there, she couldn't ignore the faint pull at the back of her mind, the lingering sensation that the abyss might not be the enemy she thought it was. The lines between friend and foe were blurring, and Reverie wasn't sure anymore where she stood in this battle. Her thoughts were interrupted by a sound, footsteps approaching from behind. She turned, startled, and found herself face to face with one of her companions, Kale. His eyes, usually sharp and filled with purpose, were now clouded with uncertainty. "It's getting worse, isn't it?" Kyle asked, his voice strained. "I can feel it. The abyss. It's here." Reverie nodded, her gaze sweeping over the landscape. The corruption was undeniable now. The dreamscape had changed irreparably. What once felt like a place of refuge was now a battleground, torn between the forces of light and darkness. The abyss was no longer something distant or abstract. It had become a living, breathing force that was intertwining with their world. "I don't know how much longer we can hold it back," Reverie admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. "But we can't let it consume us. We must find a way to stop it." Kale stepped forward, his eyes narrowing. "Do you really believe we can stop it? The abyss is not something we can simply banish. We've tried before. It only grows stronger." Reverie looked at him, her mind racing. She had seen the devastation the abyss had wrought in other realms, in other lives. She knew the stakes, knew the consequences of failure. But she also knew that they couldn't give up, not while there was still a chance, no matter how slim. "We must find a way," she repeated more firmly this time. "Even if it means walking into the abyss itself." Kale met her gaze, his expression torn. "And what if we don't come back?" "Then we will have given everything for the dreamscape," Reverie said softly, "and that's all we can do." There was a long silence between them, heavy with the weight of their decision. The abyss was already here, in the dreamscape, and time was running out. Reverie turned back toward the horizon, toward the faint glow of the abyss. Its whispers called to her again, but this time she stood firm. She would not let it take her. She would not let it take them. The battle was far from over, and as the echoes of the abyss reverberated in the distance, Reverie steeled herself for the fight to come. The mists don't clear, they only deepen. You've just heard chapters 1 to 5 of Mistwoven Legends, The Awakening Dream, an Audible Archives original written by Raul and narrated by Rob. If the story has pulled you in, like this video, leave a comment with your theories and subscribe, because the next chapter will change everything. The dream is awake now, and it will follow you.
Another chapter closes, but the archives remain, waiting for the next seeker of stories. Here, no voice is lost, no tale truly ends. This is Audible Archives. Until we meet again, may your mind wander freely and your heart never forget the stories we share.